Thanks very much, Richard. And I'm joined now by Labour MP Stephen Doughty, by Henry Newman, who's Director of Open Europe, and by political commentator Ella Whelan. Stephen Doughty, you are a Remainer, or were a Remainer. You voted against the withdrawal agreement tonight. Isn't there a danger that by rejecting the agreement that was on offer, you bring the worst result from your point of view closer, which is a cliff-edge Brexit in 17 days' time?
No, because I don't believe Parliament will allow that to happen, and I think we'll see a vote tomorrow, as there has actually already been decisively against no deal. We all believe it would be catastrophic. It would be catastrophic for Ireland. Catastrophic for our relationship, and it's the very worst of all circumstances. We're not going to allow that to happen. Parliament won't allow it to happen. That's why the Prime Minister is having to put it to a free vote tomorrow. And yet, voting against a no deal is all well and good, but unless something positive can be put in its place, unless that place over there can actually reach agreement on what it actually wants and agree it with your European partners, then a no-deal exit is what's going to happen. Well, no, the Prime Minister has been very clear that she will bring forward legislation if we rule out a no-deal, if we vote for an extension, but clearly that extension has to be for a purpose, and I believe that purpose should be to put a deal back to the British people, allow them to have the final say. I think it's the only way forward. I think it's the only way in which we can get through this mess that the Prime Minister has created here, and I think it's the only way we can go back to healing some of the divisions that have been created. Ella Whelan, you were in favour of Brexit from a left-wing perspective. Bit odd to be on the same side as Jacob Rees-Mogg?
You have some strange bedfellows these days, but it's important to note that even Jacob Rees-Mogg doesn't think what I think, which is, as the MP has just said, Parliament will not let Brexit happen. No deal is the only means to enact Brexit properly now. It's the only thing that will see that democratic vote put through properly. But do you accept that the economic implications of that for very many ordinary working people in this country could be very, very serious? Ordinary working people in this country have had this discussion already. Throughout the 2016 referendum, we were told that there would be economic collapse, catastrophe, World War III, you name it, it got thrown at us. And guess what? We said that we wanted Brexit. The same is true now. I actually completely reject the idea that no deal would be a cliff edge. There might be some issues, there might be some difficulties to get over, of course. But the fact is, people have already said that they're not voting with their pockets, they're voting with their politics. And I'm afraid what the MP has just said is that we're going to potentially either be forced to delay this or to go to a second referendum to beg for our political desires, to beg Parliament again. There are tens of thousands of jobs at risk. That's an extraordinary comment to make. You know, I'm not going to vote to make my constituents poorer as a Labour MP, and nor am I going to allow them to. And nor am I. No, my constituents voted to remain. They are increasingly wanting to stay as they see the chaos. And I have Leave voters in my constituency who come up to me. They're seeing the job losses. They're seeing the impact. They're going to see the further austerity that Brexit is going to cause, and they want to change this. And you know, it's that kind of quizzling attitude from MPs that really disgusts voters like me. What's on the line now is the political enfranchisement of ordinary working people. What we have, the only power that we have in our hands, is the ability to put a cross in a box whenever politicians deem it necessary that we do that. What you're trying to do is take that away from us. That is scandalous. That is scandalous. Okay, I want to bring Henry Newman in, who's patiently standing in between your two colleagues. You're the Director of Open Europe. You're a former advisor to Michael Gove, so you know the internal politics of the Tory party. What on earth is going to happen?
Well, I think actually, although it's another defeat, she has narrowed the margin quite significantly. She managed to divide some of her Brexit critics on the backbenches and persuade them to back a deal. I think the most likely thing is that a version of this deal will come back to the Commons. There are still reassurances that are needed, particularly for the Democratic Unionists, and she was not able to persuade that core group within Parliament to actually move over and back it. And I think, though, that whatever Stephen says, there is not sufficient support in the Commons for a second referendum. I cannot see that happening. Jeremy Corbyn, Labour leader, didn't even mention it in his statements to the House this evening. In his speech today, very briefly. The Prime Minister. I'm going by what Anna Soubry and other second referendum campaigners have said. Read what he actually said. I look forward to looking at it much more carefully. But my understanding the Prime Minister did actually raise. We had this long tantric dance from Jeremy Corbyn. Will he or won't he back a second referendum? He's not backing it. Get real. This is not going to happen. So the choices are leave with a deal or leave with a version. Well, leave with a version of the Prime Minister's deal or leave with no deal. Nobody wants to leave with no deal, I think. You do, but very few people in the Commons. Brexit voters want to leave with no deal. I voted Brexit. I worked worked on the referendum campaign, I'm quite happy to say that this deal delivers Brexit.
Okay,
And I think
what about opinion polling? What does that show?
well, I think we saw a YouGov poll tonight which showed the majority of Leave voters would like their MPs to back the current deal. This deal does deliver Brexit. It gets us out of the European Union. It also ensures that we leave on good terms. And Steve was saying that you would back this deal if it could be put back to the people. So clearly, I don't think we should have another referendum.
There's a compromise.
I don't think there should be another referendum. I think that would be incredibly divisive. I think exactly as we just heard, people listened very carefully. They were patronised and told that they were too stupid to make up their minds, but they did assess the facts and come to their decision.
Okay, can I put that point to you, Stephen? Because the Prime Minister made the point in the Commons today, like if you have a second referendum, where do you end? Do you make it the best out of three?
No, not at all. Actually, this would be the third vote we've had on Europe, actually. And of course, we have general elections, we have elections, we have by-elections all the time. Democracy doesn't just take place on one day. It's an ongoing process. And actually, I think one of the extraordinary things is saying that we freeze in sort of, ice what happened in 2016.
But when the facts have changed.
You haven't done it yet. You haven't enacted it yet.
The movement has been.
So
All I can say,
sorry,
I speak to my constituents on a regular basis. I can tell you that the vast majority of them, it's actually gone up the number who want to remain, and of those who want to leave, there's actually an equal split between those who want no deal and those who want to leave.
As you said, your constituents who voted to remain, that's fair enough. But if you speak to the polling experts like John Curtis, what he says is the idea that there's any lead for a second referendum is misleading. And particularly, the more that people discuss it, the more they realise that exactly as we were hearing from my friend on the right, this would be very, very divisive.
Okay, Ella,
It's very.
It's the first time you've described.
I'm not on the right, and it's on the right.
My
but it's-
shoulder.
Yeah, but that's actually irrelevant. What's relevant here is that if we have a second referendum, then that means that you are asking ordinary voters to beg for their political desires, whether that be remain or leave. It's a do-over. It's a kind of petulant demand. It's a petulant. No, because what happens in elections is different.
Sorry,
what happens in elections is different. We had a referendum. It gave a result. You took part in that referendum. You didn't have any problem beforehand. You took part in that, and now you've decided that you don't like the vote. It's hard to keep control, actually, of the anger that I think a lot of people feel, because what's happened and what's happened tonight, and more importantly, what's going to happen tomorrow with the vote on no deal, is that 650 people in that building think that they can rewrite history and think that they can rewrite and ride roughshod over our political voice as
But in a
ordinary
representative
voters.
democracy, the representatives make the decisions.
Yeah, and it's interesting to point out that 61% of Labour constituencies voted leave. I mean, you are going against your voters.
Let her finish. Sorry.
You're going against your voters. I think the more likely thing that's going to happen is that tonight was important, but tomorrow is more important, because what MPs are going to do is potentially vote down no deal. What that means is taking Brexit off the table.
Stephen.
Let's be clear, since the original referendum, we had a general election where Theresa May lost her majority, where she put
got
Brexit.
elected on a
Where she put
manifesto for Brexit.
No, I didn't. I said very, very clearly what I thought should happen, and I was elected on that basis.
You're a Labour
And I
MP.
didn't vote to trigger Article 50, and neither did many other Labour MPs. No, and let's be clear, we are in there as the representatives of the people. What the public
you a
want at the
Labour
moment,
MP?
what the public wants at the moment is actually for us to come together and find a compromise on the way forward, not to be using divisive language, calling people quislings, that sort of nonsense.
What you
Actually, that's the sort of stuff that increases hate and division in the country instead of bringing us together and finding a way forward.
Final thought to you, Henry. You're a former advisor to Michael Gove. Do you expect Michael Gove to be a candidate for the leadership of the Conservative Party in the near future?
They should have him on last those questions. I don't speak for him anymore. I work for a think tank, but he's a very good Prime Minister. I'm waiting, I'm sure, but I think it's very likely.
Okay. Well, thank you all indeed, very much indeed, for joining us on this very cold evening outside the House of Commons. But for the moment, back to you in studio, Richard.